Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for attending today's webinar. My name is Cindy Velasquez, and I'm the Marketing Coordinator at New Horizons in Chicago, and I will be your MC. So what that means is that I'm here to answer any questions you may have. And our presenter and subject matter expert today is Harold Weisel, and he's going to give you guys a great presentation on PMI triangle leadership and strategic and business management implications. In case you're not familiar with New Horizons is the largest independent IT training company in the world. We have the best instructors in the business that provide learning solutions like Amazon, Cisco, Citrix, Microsoft, just to name a few. We also offer professional development training in a variety of areas like project management to Office 365. So if any of you are looking for that kind of application or professional development training, please take a look at nhls.com. With that said, I'm handing it over to Harold, and if you have any questions, please feel free to add them in the chat box or save them for afterwards.
All right, well, thank you, Cindy, and I guess I'll have to agree with you that you have the best instructors in the world. Thank you. My name is Harold Weisel. I'm just flashing up here on the screen the president of Manager Mechanics, Eric Bloom, who partners with New Horizons and has done so for the last 6 or 7 years. And during this presentation, I'll talk a little bit about some of the other classes we offer with New Horizons and do a little more at the end. But again, my name is Harold Weisel, so good morning to everybody. I'm the president of Performagee, and I work with Manager Mechanics to provide training to IT individuals and teams to help them work better with their business partners. So as someone who has walked in your shoes, I know how difficult it can be to get business requirements and keep to a project schedule that meets the business's needs. So I hope that throughout our time here today, I can give you a glimpse into some techniques we teach to help you to be successful in your roles. So thank you for being here. If there are any questions, as Cindy said, just go ahead and type them into the chat. And Cindy, feel free to interrupt me, or we can take questions at the end. So the first couple of minutes here were about us. The rest of this webinar is all about you. Now, I don't read slides too much during the webinar, but I do want to read this one excerpt directly from the PMI Talent Triangle. What it says is, in today's increasingly complex and competitive global marketplace, technical skills are simply not enough. Companies are seeking added skills in leadership and business intelligence to support longer-range strategic objectives that contribute to the bottom line. The ideal skill set found in the PMI Talent Triangle is a combination of technical, leadership, and strategic business management expertise. To stay relevant and competitive, you must develop these employer-demanded skills. So I did a Google search on soft skills to get promoted. And one of the results that I really liked was be diplomatic. And what the definition said is, when difficult topics need to be discussed, step up, speak with tact and social awareness, helping to keep the overall tone of the conversation productive. This directly addresses several of the topics we're going to discuss today. Those include communication skills, influence, negotiation, and emotional intelligence. So the PMI Talent Triangle. In this webinar, we focus on two sides of the triangle. We focus on leadership, and we focus on the strategic and business management legs. So this is not just me telling you about these kinds of requirements. This is straight from PMI. We're going to describe 3 of these on this leadership slide to touch on a few themes. We'll see in a bit how these can be categorized and help you to focus on the skills you may need to improve. But first, Cindy is going to bring up a poll. Cindy, if you can do that, the question is, what are the top 3 items you think you need to work on to be successful?
All right, I'll let the poll go for about a minute or less. Okay, maybe just like 10 more seconds. Looks like people are just finishing up right now.
All right, great.
Okay.
So what do we have there for results, Cindy? Because I could not see those. All right, so we've got half of you that think we need coaching and mentoring, and half think about influencing. That's very interesting. Influencing we'll talk about quite a bit, and I do touch on coaching and mentoring. I know we have a little bit of a smaller audience today. I would add that listening is really important. We can all do a better job listening, but let's move on. Thank you very much for the poll there, Cindy. So let's talk about a couple of these items. Let's start with a tough one. Let's start with conflict management. Every project, every team, every company will experience conflicts. So these run the gamut, from a disagreement on strategy to difference of opinion on priorities to personality clashes. As project managers or as technical leaders, you have to address conflicts in order to keep your team focused and on track. What are some of the communication skills and leadership skills you can bring into a negotiation on resource allocations? Perhaps you can help turn the conversation into a focus on the issues rather than each side's position to be more successful and help them find common ground. If we talk next about team building, as project leaders, we're often challenged with working with a small core team and then a broader team of resources that are brought into a project at various times depending upon our milestones. Additionally, our teams may be remote, so that presents additional challenges. What can you do to make each team member feel as if it's truly part of the team? As individuals, we naturally wonder, what's in it for me? So as a project leader, you have to be prepared to answer that question. Tell them about the project goals, how they align with the company's goals, or how it might help their job or lead to additional training. To build the team, you have to build up each individual. Another frequent aspect of team building is working in remote teams. How do you ensure that every member of the team, especially those who may not be co-located with others, feels a part of the team? You need to figure out ways to include them so that they don't feel like out of sight, out of mind. Perhaps you have a budget where you can bring them in locally to work with the other team members for a few days, or you might be using a lot of video conferencing so that they can get some sense of body language from other team members. I also recommend having an occasional one-on-one call with these remote workers to check in with them to make sure they're doing okay. We'll talk a little bit more later about team dynamics, and a periodic check-in with team members can help you gauge how things are running. So finally on this slide, the other topic I'll talk about, which is what many of you were interested in, is influencing. As project managers, we need things from people. We often need to influence or persuade them to help us. And many times, especially as project leaders of a highly cross-functional team, you may be trying to lead and influence without direct authority. Without going too deeply into this area, think about how you create and maintain relationships with different team members and project stakeholders. If you take a minute, I bet you could write down 2 or 3 notes about every single person you interact with and find at least one particular area that will help you to persuade those people to help you. It might be a common interest that each of you has, or it could be something that you did for that person in the past and maybe he owes you one. Influence doesn't mean bullying, it's persuading people that came up with your idea. persuading them that they came up with your idea. All right, let's move on to the next slide here. Let's talk now and take a brief look at the other leg of the triangle we'll touch upon today, the areas of strategic and business management. So take a minute to read this and think about what's the first thing that you might notice here. So one thing that I notice is that although many, if not most projects require some technology component, there's not a single reference to technology on this slide. Why is that? Well, because when we run projects or communicate project status, we should be always referencing the business benefits of the project. Will it save money, or will it improve productivity by 10%? Will it reduce compliance risk for us or address audit items? Will it enable us to compete more effectively because we can be more innovative or respond more quickly to changing markets? Technology may help drive a company to achieve its goals, but in almost all cases, it's a tool or enabler, not the end result. So again, let's take a brief look at 3 areas listed here from the strategic and business management leg of the triangle. First, what is benefits management realization? I had to look this one up on the PMI website to find out what they meant by that. So it means, among other things, managing the project portfolio based on real strategic outcomes and value creation. We discuss this in depth later, and we talk about it a lot in many of our other classes, but I'm glad to see that it aligns to some of the other areas that we do teach. Also importantly, it means establishing the right conditions for success, including setting expectations for required behaviors, having the right project managers in place, and securing senior level sponsorship. We all know that a project cannot be successful without senior level sponsorship. It's dead from the beginning without it. It ties straight back to the first thing I said about strategic business outcomes. Secondly, let's look at business acumen. From an internal perspective, how well do you know your businesses and the products or services they sell? Have you taken a moment to think about why the product helps customers and how by helping customers it's achieving your company's strategic goals? Those are important, begin to show your knowledge or acumen for your company's business. From an external perspective, what do you know about your industry and how do you increase that knowledge? Do you read industry publications like American Banker if you're in financial services? What about general business periodicals like Fortune or Forbes? I've read Fortune since I'm out of college, and let's just say that my youngest child is almost out of college. So that tells you a little bit about how long I've been reading that. It allows me to keep up to date on current trends and also think about how some of the challenges facing one industry are similar to other industries. What I'm telling you is that you should take advantage of these resources. It will help you to build your knowledge base. The third area we'll explore here is what's meant by customer relationship and satisfaction. Do you have a good relationship with your customers? In the case of project managers or technical leaders, it's very likely that your customers are the internal business partners who sell a product or service to external customers. Do you take the time to speak with your business partners and listen to their issues? What business problems are they trying to solve? That's how you can build that relationship. Sit with them, ask them questions, understand their business and what keeps them up at night. You'll begin to see that as your relationship forms and becomes stronger, that the stereotypical tension between IT and the business will start to weaken because they begin to see you as someone who's vested in their success. You may also see that as the relationship becomes better, funding for your projects becomes available. And that's the kind of cycle we like to see in IT. All right, so let's back up for a minute and define the different types of soft skills. We divide these skills into 6 basic categories: interpersonal communication and leadership characteristics, analytical and business skills, management tasks, and business knowledge. At Manager Mechanics, we analyze not only the PMI talent triangle, but we look at the IIBA IBOC, we look at ITIL, we look at Agile Scrum Master requirements, and many of you might be Scrum Masters. We also look at product management certification requirements. And looking at all this, we see that every certification is close to what's listed or assumed in the PMI talent triangle. So let's take a few minutes here and talk about each of these 6 different areas of soft skills. So the first one is interpersonal communication, and as the name alludes, we're talking about interaction between people. In the first bracket, I guess March Madness, that's appropriate, we've grouped emotional intelligence and body language together because they both relate to what and how we're feeling. If you're not familiar with emotional intelligence, it's gained a lot of traction in the last several years. We teach it in several of our classes, and you can also check out some good YouTube videos from Travis Bradbury to get some basic information. In short, we need to be aware of ourselves and how we act in certain situations. We also need to be aware of others and how they're acting in those situations. Part of that self-awareness and awareness of others, or social awareness, as it's called in emotional intelligence, is considering your body language. Make sure it's consistent with the audio message. People who aren't being totally honest will often look away suddenly while talking, or they might start moving their hand toward their face to hide their mouth. In summary, on this first section, the goal is to develop relationships that help us to be successful both personally and professionally. So when we develop those relationships, we gain the ability to influence others. Communication is two-way. In a perfect world, assuming 2 people, we're both listening and we're both speaking, and hopefully not simultaneously. So this is where active listening is important. The phrase means you are engaged in the conversation. You're not preparing your next response. You're not thinking about drinks after work. Your conversation partner feels as if you really care about what he or she is saying. You're reflecting back to make sure you understand, or you may be asking some relevant clarification questions. As project managers and technology professionals, getting good business requirements that we can translate into technical requirements is a never-ending struggle. Using techniques found in active listening and purposeful questioning can help you create better products and services for your customers and end users. Third, we've grouped conflict resolution and difficult conversations together because they often go hand in hand. You can see why you have to engage in these types of conversations. You might have to reduce team stress or enhance productivity. And I'll add that one of the better ways to handle them is to consider facts rather than feelings. But you do have to acknowledge that the conflicts can be making others feel uncomfortable. There's an aspect of empathy that should be incorporated into each of these types of conversations. As a project leader, address the conflict as quickly as possible. You'll avoid a fast downward spiral in your project if you can nip that conflict in the bud. Finally, on this slide, the last 4 items pertain to your ability to communicate clearly, to focus on the business goals rather than the technical goals, and your ability to facilitate discussion among teams and stakeholders. We've already discussed business acumen in depth. Having mastery in that and the other areas will help you professionally. Practice public speaking. As project leaders, you probably talk to your teams all the time and you facilitate discussions among team members. Consider what works in those meetings and carry it to more formal presentations you have to give to senior leaders and stakeholders. Remember that most senior leaders will have a vested interest in the success of your project, so use that to your advantage when communicating with them, keeping the focus on the benefits. So let's move on to the second category of soft skills, namely leadership characteristics. Standard cast of characters is listed here. Let's just focus on how these characteristics align with the PMI talent triangle and its requirements for leadership. The first section here lists those areas that others perceive about you. In other words, these characteristics are part of our professional brand. It's what they think you know, and it's how others perceive your actions. Just think about that for a second. It's completely irrelevant if you think you're trustworthy or confident. You may be trying to cultivate a particular image, and in fact, your brand as perceived by others may be consistent with your own professional brand goals. You have to remember that perception is reality, and whatever others perceive is the actual brand you have. I have a real brand example. Recently, what about the Galaxy Note 7? Not every Samsung Galaxy Note 7 caught fire, but they had to take the drastic action of disabling everyone's device because of that risk. That had quite an impact on the perception of Samsung, and other device manufacturers capitalized on that. It shows that years of excellent reputation can be damaged by a single event. The moral of the story here is that your professional brand is always under development and only as good as your last interaction with someone. The second section here describes the areas that enable you to persuade others. If you can't influence or motivate others, or if you're not visionary and proactive, then accomplishing goals will be very difficult. As project managers, your ability to persuade, motivate others, and take advantage of opportunities as they arise are critical to your success. I've worked with project managers who've had many approaches with varying levels of success. One was a bulldog. She got you to do your work come hell or high water. Her emotional intelligence might not have been very high, but she achieved project goals that were on time and on budget. I've also worked with very relationship-focused PMs who are equally as successful in appealing to individuals' needs while reminding them of the importance of staying on target. The lesson is that you can be successful so long as you have an effective method of influencing. If you want to learn more about persuasion and influence, we teach that in several classes, and you can also check out Robert Cialdini on YouTube. The last section lists the areas which will help you to get the work done. In concert with the items listed in the previous section, having these characteristics will permit you to be successful in your projects. Project managers commit to timelines for deliverables. They commit to milestones, reporting, resource allocation, and budgeting. You're determined to get the project completed because you know it will help the business achieve its goals. Yet we know that something will change along the way. Your ability to flexibly handle those changes will dictate how successful the project will be. Finally, in this section, being accountable is the most important one there, in my opinion. So here's an example from my own personal experience. I once worked on a major financial services integration. We were moving the messaging environment of the acquired company to our systems. We had everything planned, everything tested, or so we thought. Make a long story short, we nearly brought down online banking. That's not good. So on the problem call, someone asked who was responsible. After a few minutes of silence, I said, I am. Now, did I make the error? No, probably not, but I was accountable for the success of that project. Fortunately, the fact that the online banking senior executive thanked my senior executive for someone taking accountability probably saved my job. Don't be afraid of accountability and responsibility. We expect others to be accountable. You need to expect the same of yourself. All right. Third soft skill, analytical skills. That is thinking about what can be done, figuring out how to get it done, and then doing it. Now, we don't teach a class on how to use the abacus, but the ability to analyze and use data and make decisions has been around since humans began their journey on the earth. Today we have many techniques that help us to develop ideas to solve problems. We brainstorm, whether in an old-fashioned meeting or in some online forum. The purpose of brainstorming is to generate creative thinking, and by that we mean solutions that not only solve the problem, but solve it in an elegant way. The beauty of brainstorming, if done correctly, is that we'll come up with something elegant because you've incorporated components of some of the off-the-wall ideas. You're less likely to develop a simple workaround. We want solutions that either fix a problem, remove a risk, improve productivity, or improve our standing in the market. And that's where strategic thinking comes into play. You want to make sure that the solutions make sense and that you're solving the right problem. It must be aligned to your company's strategic goals, otherwise why do it? After you theorize about what can be done, you start prioritizing and determining which potential solutions will help you to best solve your problems. You have to make some decisions. They should be based on some objective, fact-based criteria. But don't discount intuition, which is really your vast experiences telling you what may or may not be possible. At least use that intuition to raise your support or raise objections, and then test it with your project teams. Finally, you get a chance to innovate. Does anybody want to write something in the chat window about what innovation is? I think it's a somewhat squishy word and would love to hear other people's opinions. I'll keep talking here for a minute, but if you have an idea about innovation, please share it. Does every solution need to be innovative? Well, we said a moment ago that the solution should elegantly solve the problem. So perhaps the approach is innovative. Maybe you can simultaneously work on tasks that will tighten the project schedule in a way that hasn't been tried before. Or you might have a truly innovative solution that solves customer problems or greatly reduces the workload in the company. Hopefully the creative thinking has led you down a path towards an innovative solution.
I've got one for you.
Okay, great.
So it's kind of similar to digital transformation, or it's revolutionary or something different that could be considered innovative.
Yeah, I mean, digital transformation certainly is one of those areas that covers a broad spectrum of meaning for different companies, different industries. But if you break it down into bits and pieces, it's how do we bring everything either online, or how do we automate? And automation is a great way, a great place for innovation. So I like that idea there. Yeah, and it's creative. You can call it out-of-the-box thinking, but that's a great comment and absolutely relevant to what innovation is all about. So thank you, whoever shared that. Okay, let's move on now to business skills. So I worked with a project manager several years ago who said to me, "I'm a jack of all trades, master of none." Being a project manager can often feel that way. Look at the different skills we recommend that you have, that the talent triangle recommends you have to be successful. You're never going to master all of these. Well, I shouldn't say never, but it's hard. But you do need to have some competencies in each of them, or have someone that you can lean upon to help you and your team be successful. In the first category, we discussed running your team. So as project managers, we already talked about, you live in teams. You live in meetings. You're constantly negotiating and setting goals and deadlines. Having these abilities will allow you to be much more successful as a project manager. Remember that diversity has many components, with the overall goal of having different viewpoints and diversity of thought. We just spent some time discussing innovation and creative thinking. You don't want people who always agree with one another. That's not how you're going to get diverse thought and innovative solutions. Moving on to the second category here, your personal abilities. So if you're a parent or you're ever babysat, think about the times you tried to put the children to bed. Was there a negotiation involved? Can you read me a book, Mommy? Or tell me that story again, Dad. Who had the upper hand? What were the positions versus the interests? Your position was probably, I need a glass of wine, so I'm getting the kids to bed now. While their interests were, I want to spend a little more time with Mom before I fall asleep. In a successful negotiation, you consider the interests over the positions. I'm going to argue that the kids won out on those. Finally, there are areas of project management and leadership positions where you interact one-on-one with your teams. There are skills here too. You may be interviewing members for your project team. What are some of the skills that you have to consider? What exactly is fit? The person is going to need some specific skills to complete work on your team, but do you value their teamwork and passion over their technical capabilities, or do you just need someone who is a heads-down, excellent coder? You have to decide on the requirements there. In addition, you'll often need to mentor staff and guide them. Make your team successful by mentoring them and trusting them. We're going to talk about this more in a few minutes. The last item here I want to mention is staff reviews. In a perfect world, there are no surprises during the annual review. You've had constant interaction with your project team members, and you've praised them as appropriate, or you've told them privately that they're not meeting goals. I know personally I didn't like when a manager told me something at my year-end review that I had no idea that he felt. If it's a difficult conversation you need to have with a team member, have it anyway. Practice it for a few minutes or role play it with someone first. But have those conversations throughout the year rather than waiting until the year-end review. Your teammate will appreciate it much more. Here are several management tasks that will make you successful as project managers or technology leaders. You can't do everything yourself. You are going to need to delegate. Do it in a way that makes the person receiving the work feel responsible and accountable. There's that word again. Even if you're truly the one accountable. It will help with overall team building and employee engagement. Don't micromanage them, but determine a process to provide constructive feedback. And always start and finish with something positive. So remember we mentioned jack of all trades, master of none? This last section here, especially managing change and stress reduction, relies on your ability to play psychiatrist with your team. I don't have to tell you that even those most open to change still need to understand why change is required, and most importantly, how it will impact them. Stresses in the job can be very real. You know the saying, the straw that broke the camel's back? I just recently read an article about how a team can be humming along just fine and suddenly productivity goes down and team dynamics begin to fail. It's often attributed to just one new thing that's been introduced into a project. Perhaps it's a new task, or it might be some additional process or documentation that requires much more time and effort. As project managers, be acutely aware of your team's dynamics and seek to reduce the stressors that can impact your project. All right, so Cindy, we're going to do that other quick poll right now. This one is a little bit more fun, but I'll let Cindy pop that up on the screen. So if you could have one project manager superpower, what would it be? Would you like to be a mind reader, the instantaneous report generator? Would you like to have a telepathic whip cracking superpower? Or would you like to be a money tree grower?
I like the money tree grower.
You know, that would always be good, but even Even having all the money in the world doesn't mean your project's going to be successful.
All right, I'll let it go for maybe like 20 more seconds.
All
So
right.
if you, okay.
All right, so what have we got here for results? Instantaneous report generator and whip cracker. That's pretty funny. I would have gone with mind reader, but maybe that's because if it would probably help my marriage more than my project management capabilities. But I like the report generator, and I will talk about that in just a moment. The fact that we as project managers get hit up all the time for different types of reporting, and it feels like we're just duplicating effort all the time around reporting. So that's a good one. All right, let's move on here to business knowledge. So let's talk about that. We categorize this into two areas: the knowledge you need to help drive a project's success and your professional success, and the knowledge you need to maximize the project's value to your stakeholders. So in the first area, this knowledge includes understanding the business models and structures of your company or client, and having a good sense of the competitive landscape in which your company sells its products and services. Every company has a culture, and within that culture are many of the business models they follow. Make sure that how you report project status to stakeholders is aligned with the expectations of the company. For example, you might need some very detailed reports for some managers or divisions, and you might need some more high-level reporting for other leaders or divisions. Having a good understanding of their models and their organizational structure is important for project success, and also to minimize a lot of rework when everyone wants an update on the project. Regarding customer relationship and satisfaction, we talked a bit earlier about employee engagement and strategic thinking. When you're able to tie your project to the competitive environment or to the company's strategic goals, or how the project will improve customer relationships and satisfaction, your project teams will feel more engaged and more motivated to achieve project success. Second section requires that you understand the industry in which you work. Now, what are the standard measures that you need to turn into KPIs? Or maybe you've got some legal and regulatory requirements that have to be built in to your solution delivery. By having this knowledge, you confirm to your stakeholders that you understand what is important to them and that the projects you're leading will deliver value to their business. It also helps to be knowledgeable about the company's operational functions. As we just discussed reporting, the finance department, for example, might have certain requirements for monthly reporting, and you'll need to provide input to them around project costs or project estimates and forecasting. The HR team is going to want to know if there are training requirements around your project so that they can plan training sessions accordingly. Be attuned to all of these back office type functions in the company so that you're not surprising those groups and you're not surprised by their needs. All right, how can you use this to your advantage? First, we talked about the list of skills that you need as part of your certification. Now, let's talk about how you can use these skills to your advantage. Since you're required to have these skills or take the classes as part of your PMP certification requirements, let's look at some specific things you can do to enhance your job performance that will help lead to your certification. Developing and practicing each of these skills we discussed will invariably help you with your job performance. Clearer communicators get their points across. If others understand the issues or they understand the approach or timeline you suggest, then they're more likely to buy into your recommendations. Consider both what you're saying and how you're saying it. With this arsenal of new and improved skills, your confidence will continue to grow. That confidence will help you if you're looking for promotion opportunities or a different career progression. Maybe you're a very skilled technician or a Microsoft project whiz, but the interpersonal skills you develop, including confidence, communication, influence, and negotiation, are what will move your career forward. Great leaders can start anywhere in a company, but getting recognized for your potential is up to you. Let's take a quick look at two examples on the next slide. So first, as project managers, we've discussed several of these ideas. You do use or you will use negotiation skills all the time to help prevent scope creep or to get a specialized resource on your project for a week to help you meet a particular deliverable. Mentoring your staff. Not only does it build loyalty and enhance team skills as noted here, but it also helps you from a professional brand perspective because you become known as a resource who is willing to share his or her knowledge with others. Think about how many times you helped a colleague navigate a particular issue or deal with a difficult stakeholder. Or think about when someone was sharing their knowledge with you. The knowledge that you pass along helps them to be more successful. There are plenty of managers who don't share or they hold knowledge close to the vest. Don't be that person. Influence skills. Again, you'll need this if you want to get support from a manager or from your business partners for an approach you want to take on a project. Your ability to clearly articulate the benefits and how it will help them meet their business goals are crucial in your ability to influence their decision in your favor. Finally, we discussed earlier, how do you handle conflict? And how you do it will often dictate the success of a project. There's always going to be conflict. It could be scheduling conflicts, resource conflicts, or as we noted earlier, personality conflicts. A truly skilled project manager needs to perform mental yoga to flexibly work through the conflicts and develop a solution that everyone can live with. On the second example here, if we move on to Scrum Masters, in addition to what's listed here for meeting skills, fostering innovation, and team building, you have to remember that as the Scrum Master, you're a little bit above the team as the leader, but everyone works together. There's this notion of servant leadership that's necessary to make the team successful. What can I do for you to help make you successful? If you think about your daily Scrum meetings, there are specific processes you use. Your role is coordinating, managing the meetings, making them as effective as possible. These aspects show your worth and capability, but most importantly, they help you to execute and meet your business goals. So just some final thoughts here. Your business knowledge combined with leadership, your interpersonal and your business skills will perfectly position you for future professional growth and opportunity. Take full advantage of this. Don't underestimate the necessity and the power of those skills that are outlined in the PMI talent triangle. They will help you immensely in your professional and your personal life. I just want to highlight a few of the upcoming classes that you can reference at the New Horizons and the Manager Mechanics websites. In addition to some of the classes that are directly related here to your PMP certification, we also offer a certification through Manager Mechanics and through New Horizons called the IT Management and Leadership Professional. And that may be of some interest to some of you. I just want to thank everybody very much for spending time with me here for the last 45 minutes, and I'm going to turn it back over to Cindy.
All right. So while we wait for any more questions, I did want to mention that this webinar is being recorded, and everyone will get an email link later on today or tomorrow. And also, if you wanted to download the PowerPoint presentation from today, it's in the chat box named Handouts, so you can go ahead and download that. So let's see if we have any more questions. And then if anyone does come up with a question later, you can go ahead and email info@nhls.com and we'll get that answered for you. Okay, well, if no one has any questions, thank you, Harold, for the presentation. And
Thank
everyone
you
had
as well.
a great day.